stuck on the hoary heads of gray old men. Today, a traveler does not see this Sicily. The towns no longer look that way, and the people certainly do not. Visitors, and even today's younger residents, must imagine what it looked like during that emotionally and physically destructive war. Just as it takes imagination to piece together the ruins of Greek temples at Selinunte or Agrigento. It is difficult for the casual observer to try to imagine what the Greek towns might have looked like before becoming the ruins that are now buried under scrub-covered hillsides or locked beneath the once medieval but now modern historic centers of places like Catania or under Agrigento, with its ugly post-war sprawl. Occasionally, I can find a gnarly olive tree that locals say is 2,000 years old, and imagine a Greek farmer leaning against it as he eats his noonday meal in the warm Sicilian sun. The closest I came to being lost in imagination as a world-wise adult was when I stood in 1986 between two columns on the platform of the Temple of the Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, at Agrigento's Valley of the Temples. I stretched my arms out like the biblical Samson while a friend shot a photo. Standing on that platform, I had tried to visualize what must have been around me 3,000 years earlier. I returned nearly 3 decades later, climbed up, and again stretched my arms out between the same two columns for another photograph. In comparing them side by side, I saw how dramatically I had changed, physically, from my early 40s to my late 60s. The temple, its ruins still scattered as before, had not changed a bit. There is a lot of the ancient Greek world tossed about in Sicily. The Greeks were the first historical colonizers of southern Italy and Sicily, that the conquering Romans later called Magna Graecia, or Great Greece. These early Greeks displaced and absorbed many of the indigenous peoples that had wandered there from throughout the Mediterranean during Europe's darkest prehistory. In more recent times, the 18th and 19th centuries, after a series of other conquerors had come and gone, and come again, Italy and Sicily were the focus of well-to-do Europeans who wanted to absorb some of that ancient ambiance. A friend, Franco De Angelis, a professor of archaeology and Greek history, writes that these Greek ruins drew grand tour travelers to Italy and Sicily, primarily because Greece, then part of the Ottoman Empire, was not as accessible. The activities of these travelers often centered around writing travelogues, studying and illustrating art and architecture, and absorbing as much of Greek antiquity and its survival as possible. I have not spent a lot of time in Greece, but I suspect that there are more Greek ruins in Sicily, and many of them better maintained, than in Greece. Some of the many conquerors of this island in the center of the Mediterranean world, Greeks, Byzantines, Muslims, Normans, Germans, Spanish, left distinct marks on the land and the people. Others, such as the Romans, Vandals, and French, did not thoroughly integrate with the native islanders and left fewer marks. The DNA mostly associated with Sicilians whose family lines flow well back into antiquity comes from the Greeks, who blended in over the centuries with the island's original population, and the Muslims and Christian Berbers from North Africa. Sicilians today make up a rich minestrone of many of these cultures, and many fiercely maintain their identity as Sicilians and not Italians. After all, it was the northern Italians who were the island's last conquerors, leading to the unification of Italy between 1860 and 1870. Early in my experiences as a traveler, I often was frustrated because places I expected to be one way, the way I had imagined them to be as a child, were really quite different. Much more modern, say, than I expected. The more I traveled,